Well, here we are. I think I might need a Kleenex in a minute. I might have one. I actually got one. I'm good. Just be prepared. So first, I want to say welcome to everybody. I want to thank you who are joining us in person and those online. I don't know where the camera is. Don't do this. To celebrate my dad's life. We as a family are deeply touched by all the messages, cards, and phone calls we have received showing your love and support for us in this time. It's really meant a lot. There's been evenings where me and Mom have just read the messages and giggled and shared a few tears, and it's good. You have a written eulogy of some of the milestones in my dad's life. But I want to share with you who this man was and why I believe he impacted so many lives. I want to honor the man he was here on earth, and hopefully, in the process, see his legacy live on in all of us. My dad was a man of Finnish background, and there's a unique Finnish concept, sisu, that can roughly be translated into English as strength of will, determination, perseverance, and acting rational in the face of adversity. When I look at my dad's life, I can't help but see this concept lived out in real time. When I think of what a dad is, I think of someone to look up to, someone to follow and admire, someone to learn from and respect, someone to listen to, someone who listens to you. Someone who is always there, and someone who loves you unconditionally. To say my dad was my hero would be an understatement. In my eyes, he was larger than life. He was not perfect and never claimed to be. As a matter of fact, my dad was never too proud to say sorry. He not only said sorry to me for the way he may have handled the situation, but at times would step in and say sorry for others when they didn't. Always allowing me space to discover empathy, forgiveness, and grace. And ending the moment with, Laura, we can afford to be gracious. I'm a people pleaser by nature, and my dad recognized that early in my life. Often telling me, Laura, you can please some of the people some of the time, but you will never please everyone all the time. Be who you are, and remember, you'll always be Daddy's girl. There were times in my teen years when people's expectations of a preacher's kid came with harsh judgments. But my dad was always quick to defend me. Don't put my faith on her, he'd say. She needs to develop her own. He always encouraged me to discover who I was and find my faith. It didn't matter what people said. He knew my heart, and he knew the heart of God for me. Nothing was changing his mind. I was loved, and that was all there was to it. People even counseled him in the area of tough love for a season in my life. But my dad, he believed more in the power of love. He allowed me to make choices. And whatever they were, he was going to walk with me through them. And I was never alone. My dad had a unique gift of seeing the heart of a person. Although my dad had a heart for the local church, which he lived out in the life as a pastor, he believed we had to live out our faith in a relationship with God, not with a building or tenets written by man, but in the heart. A common phrase he lived out every day as a pastor was, relationships are more important than religion. He recognized that we as humans have a need not only to be seen but embraced. The love of God was the very foundation that everything out of him flowed from. My dad loved me unconditionally. He loved me through all kinds of circumstances, some good, some bad. He loved me when I agreed with him and when I didn't. He loved me when I was at my best, and he loved me when I was at my worst. And he never shunned me from his presence. He always had a hug for me, even if it was self-inflicted. My dad showed up in a crisis. He was the calm in the midst of a storm, the rational voice in the midst of adversity. I will never forget when my daughter Amanda fell from some bleachers that were about 10 feet tall onto a concrete floor. My dad was the first call I made, and 2.5 hours later, he was walking in that hospital doorway. He was calming my fears and comforting the first of Papa's girls. I can't tell you how many times he would show up on my doorstep, even when I least expected it. I recall one of the hardest days of my life. I received a phone call asking me, "Laura, what do you want for supper?" And I said, "What are you talking about, Dad?" He said, "I just got in town." My dad drove 4 hours so I wouldn't be alone. He was never too busy for me. When we lived near, I could go to the church and his office door was always open. When miles separated us, not only could I phone him any time of the day, I often would get a phone call breaking up my day at work asking me, "How's Daddy's girl?" He listened to my ideas and I listened to his. He taught me the practical things in life like driving a standard because his girl was going to drive a stick shift. Taught me how to change a tire, change the oil. As a little girl, I was often by his side watching him fix almost anything. When I got older, he was by my side, walking me through fixing all sorts of things, like changing outlets, thermostats, fixing a leaky faucet, welding a dripping water pipe, or putting in new cupboards, windows. Scotty was there for that one. Or building a deck, and oh, so much more. But some of those walkthroughs were step-by-step instructions over the phone, because no matter what, I knew he was only a phone call away. No one could glue together something that was broken like my dad. Epoxy and glue were always a hand's thrown away. They were right there. I loved Sunday afternoons with my dad. They consisted of watching golf, complaining about the announcers and their comments, and always a nap in between it all. But I loved it. I was in my dad's presence. My dad had seen me cry, laugh, and get mad. Sometimes all of it in the same day. But he never turned me away. Even when I told him I hated him, he never rejected me. But rather, he saw my anger for what it was, my own pain. He knew I was hurting, and he took that pain that I caused in his heart as a place of bearing my wounds to see me healed. My dad loved jokes, as we all heard. And, oh, he loved those. He might have been, he was the one who told the corniest jokes around. And he always made me laugh. Didn't matter. Nobody could say a dad's joke like my dad. So all of you are trying, they're doing a real good job, but you gotta pick it up a notch. You guys were pretty close. Bad.
I don't better up on that.
Gary, you gotta work on it. I remember when he introduced my son to Abbott and Costello. The bantering that went back and forth went on for hours, it seemed. And I still don't know who's on first. Do you? My dad loved my life. My dad loved life, and he lived it to the fullest. Sometimes that was being on a road trip and seeing a sign and saying, "It's only a few minutes away, let's stop." And stop we did. We stopped to walk on frozen lakes, climb rocks, run through fields, jump into rivers, but mostly we stopped for bathroom breaks for my mom. His love for the outdoors could be seen in many ways, but no more than golfing and fishing. If you were struggling with your golf swing, he always had time to show you a few tricks. Like, hold your head down while you were swinging. I think the biggest trick he pulled out of his sleeve, it's not in my sleeve. Was the golf gizmo. If you don't know what it is and you can't really see, it's okay, I'll tell you. He would drill a hole in a golf ball. Out came the epoxy again, like I said, it was right there. Put that string on, tie it on to a tie-down wrap, because those were another thing that was our staple in his life. Right, Gary? You got a few in your tickle trunk, don't you? I thought so. It was always a good time. We can talk about that later, if you want to know. There was another constant in life with my dad, my mom. They shared a special kind of love. He loved her deeply. She was always by his side. Where he was, she was. They came together as a package deal. Except for playing board games or cards. That's when the gloves came off. But he was never afraid to express his love for her at home or in public. He was always holding her hand, leaning over for that kiss, or singing an Elvis Presley song. She was his angel, and he was her hunk. At the beginning I said I wanted to share with you a little bit about my dad to bring honor to the name. I believe many of you can relate to some of these memories I shared. You might even have thought, as I shared them, he did that for me too. That was my dad. He had room for everyone. There was always room at the family table for another chair, always enough time to take another phone call or make one more stop on the way. We got time. He always had time to hear one more story. And we always seemed to be the last ones to walk out the door because he didn't want to miss out on anyone. Sorry, honey, I picked up that mantle. I hope when you remember my dad, you remember the legacy of love he so freely gave to us all. That in remembering him, you see how love can change those around you in some of the most practical moments of the day. I am forever grateful for the dad he was to me, the grandfather to my children, for how he and my mom shared a love that was so special. We are who we are because he lived his life and loved us. I'm honored that so many others have opened their hearts to know the love that could not be contained in his heart. He was a man that allowed himself to be poured out as a living sacrifice of love to those around him. And yet he never saw it as a sacrifice. It was always a joy, and that was his strength. I hope that through my sharing you can see how my dad reflected the very nature of God. Love here on earth. Because of my dad, I know who God is. Because of my dad, I know I'm loved. Dad, I love you and I will forever be Daddy's girl.